it was a hell of a turnaround going from net help desk to a Formula One partner. I had a weird scenario and a weird problem that was presented to me to go and manage, where we had the right product and no one knew who we were. So then suddenly, extroverted Tim comes out the box and we have to come in like a tornado, and we have to leverage the tools we have to go and cause as much notoriety as we can and awareness to get people to understand who we are. Because as soon as we knew, as soon as people saw the product, being a product-led team with technical founders, that it is likely going to be the best fit and they'll be really excited to use it.
Welcome to Now That's It, Stories of MSP Success, where we dive into the journeys of some of the trailblazers in our industry to find out how they used their passion for technology to help turn managed services into the thriving sector it is today.
Today's guest wasn't just named the CRN 2025 Channel Chiefs list. He didn't just get introduced into the Channel Partners Circle of Excellence. He's doing something far more rare in the world of MSP and PSA platforms. He's building trust through momentum, culture, and the power of listening to your partners. I'm really excited today because we have Tim Barton-Wines on the Now That's It podcast. Welcome, Tim.
Nice, great to be here. Thanks, Chris.
This is going to be a lot of fun. I have been a big fan of everything you guys have done. I can't hear enough from our partners and those in the industry talking about all the great stuff. But today I want to talk a little bit about you. All right.
Okay.
I want to start with you a little bit.
Okay.
So like to go to the way back machine here. Your start, well, it wasn't necessarily off-brand for you. Doesn't typically lead to software development. Let's talk about your alcohol sales days.
So I've had a weird trajectory into the space where I was working part-time at like a restaurant, and then I had my gym buddy's cousin was opening a spirits concession in a wine shop. And he was like, do you know anyone that can help sell some alcohol? And then I got a text message and I was like, yeah, I'll do that. So my first real job was a vodka salesperson. And I was selling just premium alcohol in a wine shop to start with. And that really taught me a lot about what it takes to to go from nothing into hustle. I guess it was my first real taste of hustling. And then moving on from there, I've got a lot of friends who seem to refer me to jobs, because I had another friend who had come back from Australia after traveling after university, and she was working at a local SaaS company in business continuity where I live, very small, like 20 person shop. And she was doing Q&A as like an entry level role. And she asked me if I wanted to come join her. And I said, yeah, sure. Because the margin on alcohol is about 7%. You have to, when you're 20 years old trying to make money, that's thousands of bottles of alcohol before you actually make a wage. But yeah, my first ever job when I transitioned into the SaaS industry was the job interview was, can you log into Facebook backwards from memory? I guess that was just some sort of functions test to make sure I was, normal.
Mm-hmm.
And then, my first job was Excel sheets, hundreds of lines.
Wow.
Go here, click that. Does that work? Yes. Next line. And that was just my full-time job.
It's great. Now, so what's interesting is that partners that don't know you is probably going to go, wow, weird, starting in alcohol sales. Those that do, makes sense, right? Now they understand.
Yeah.
And that's an inside joke. So for those that...
Sure.
Yeah.
I mean, it won't take long from listening to me to understand that I'm very Irish, very extroverted,
Yeah.
very much a people person.
Yeah. You're a great host. Let's put
I'm a
it that way.
great host.
Yeah.
That's a good way of putting it.
Awesome. So how did you discover Halo, and when did you meet Paul?
That's a good question. So how did I meet Paul? How did it all start?
Mm-hmm.
So to carry on from that story, doing Q&A at his little SMB business continuity firm called Vocal Limited way back when. Got promoted into customer support, then into internal IT, then technical account management, and then I started doing implementations. Then that company got acquired by a large a much larger US firm, and then who floated on the Nasdaq, and I suddenly became employee number 2,000 or whatever. And then then the cubicles came in, and it got very corporate and serious. I kind of had a moment. I kind of woke up one day and I thought, "Is this how I die? Like I'm just
Mm.
going to die in this cubicle." So I pulled myself out, went to university, started a business degree, and then realized that the commitment was only like 7 hours a week. I
Mhm.
didn't need to quit my job. So then I got a bit restless sort of sitting around all day because the content was pretty bare. And then I thought I still had all the contacts from my alcohol days.
Mhm.
So I actually started a company called Barton's Wines and Spirits Limited, and started like as a 20, whatever I was, a young 20-year-old, something. I was selling alcohol globally. And limited success, to my point earlier about margins. And then I also picked up a part-time role for a Canadian business continuity firm who specialized in disaster recovery software, like sort of emergency communications. And I was doing implementations and working in the square mile of London, working with, you name it, the Shard. We worked with Royal Mail. We worked with Michael Kors, some cool names.
Sure.
And yeah, essentially that part time, the side hustle was growing an alcohol business. And then when I finished my degree, I thought I'd start applying to graduate roles to see where that could land me, because I had tapered off the alcohol business because of the reasons. As a young 20-year-old, you need to raise a lot of capital to be able to do that at scale and make a good living. And that was not something I was able to do. So I went on Indeed. I was applying to like Fujitsu and others, and there's this little ad that said graduate scheme, net help desk in Stone Market. Applied to it, went down there. I was in a three-piece suit. Mine's view was with Paul, the founder of Halo. This is not where we were back then. This was like, we're talking 2016 when it was. And we had a renovated pub was the office, which is super English. Now we reflect on it all these years later. That is it's a funny starting point for where we are today. Um, and then yeah, Paul was in flip flops, shorts, and a t-shirt. We sat down, and then there was like a 3-hour long interview with like multiple office tours. And I later found out that if Paul likes you after the first sort of 10 minutes, he'll start selling Halo to you. Um, and yeah, from there off we went. That's how I met Paul. That was my first interactions with Halo. And then even though I had previous experience, everyone in a graduate scheme, because Halo, just for clarity, Halo only employs graduates. If you go to our job board today, if you go look at it, there's one job, and it's the Halo graduate scheme. And we're growing so fast. You'll come in, you'll wherever your strengths lie, you'll gravitate towards. So if you're extroverted, sales. If you're technical but can happy speaking to customers, you'll go into sort of consultancy, implementations, onboardings. And if you're just very, very technical and introverted, you'll end up probably in the development team.
Yeah.
But yeah, so came in, spent 12 months on support, and then onwards that journey went from there.
So pre-Halo PSA, you come in as a support guy, which again, when we talked about that, you, up until this point, minus the wine sales, you very sort of introverted jobs, right? Your Q&A,
Yep.
support. There's some customer interaction, but not the Tim that we know today, right?
Yes, I've had to can this up to use
bottled it up.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
so pre-Halo PSA days, what was Halo like at the time?
Sure. So Halo like at the time it was actually called Net Help Desk way back when.
Mhm.
It was a Windows application. Um, and it was not the glamour, the craziness you see today. I was employee number 11, so the entire team on a Friday could fit around a table at the local pub. It was very, very small,
Mhm.
very focused. I mean, where we were was nothing nice. It was a very, how do I say this? It was a very different office, and we kind of had to look around at each other and go, God, we need to put our heads together and get ourselves out of here, which was kind of the mentality, I guess. And what happened, the transition from Net Help Desk into Halo
Mhm.
was uh, Paul. I remember this like it was yesterday. Paul came into the kitchen in the old office, and he was like, "Do you like the other Tim?" And I was like, "Yeah, he's all right." I not had much interaction. And then next thing I knew, I was in a room probably half the size of this, where I put up the first Halo PSA website, which we'd only taken down and changed recently.
Wow.
And he put up the first trial, and we probably did about 30% of what a PSA was meant to do. And off I went. It was just me and him and one other guy, Ross, who did the onboardings, and that was the genesis. And the story is that Halo started as in the ITSM space. So we started off as a help desk, matured into creating a full service desk, matured into creating a full ITSM, then ESM. And along the way, we had accumulated probably a few hundred MSP customers who were just using it for basic ticketing.
Hmm.
And we were kind of like, we took this decision. So I think it was 2017, 2018. If we should let this part of the customer base just die, or we just all focus on ITSM, or we do something about it. And Bam was up for having a crack at it, and he took me along the way. I guess is probably the best way you could put it.
It's fascinating to see how quickly you guys have evolved as a major player in the market, but where it started from, right?
Mm,
Obviously, great foundations. The ITSM product is very relevant in the Halo PSA side, but those early days, it was a ticketing system, right?
yeah, exactly. It was a ticketing system.
Yeah.
But I guess what had created that platform. I guess if you distill down why Halo has got to the position it has today, it comes down to probably the foundation that Paul, the founder, has laid. So if you meet Paul, very technical, Scottish guy, wears kilts to events, and he has a funny story where he grew up in quite a poor village at the tip top of Scotland. Like, I mean, when I say tip top of Scotland, I mean he opens the front door, he looks north, and there's the sea.
Wow.
And he got a degree at doing computer science, and then got a graduate job at EY. And he absolutely hated the culture there, where it was not how good you are, it was who you knew.
Hmm.
Um, and then the catalyst that created Halo was actually a book called Maverick by Ricardo Semler. And it's this crazy story of how a Brazilian businessman inherited a business which had very traditional corporate values, hierarchies, meaningless jobs, and how in this sort of journey where he transformed this into a very profitable business. And that message sort of resonated with Paul. It sort of aligned to all the things he thought anyway. And then he felt very emboldened to take those values and just run with them. And Paul was a very all or nothing guy, and um, he will just do it with zero compromise. So we ended up using, and so basically, Paul, for example, was a big believer in being privately owned. He thinks he's never going to die. He understand. He figures out where the value is. He just goes for it. So, long story short, he spent 15 years from a bedroom growing in. Well, actually, the story is that he met the other co-founder when EY was working with an MSP. And Alan, who's now retired because he's got about 25 years on Paul, and Paul's in his mid 40s.
Mhm.
But Alan had created a ticket. He created an online space to store stuff for a local council back in the 90s. Um, and the project got canned. Alan was just a hardcore developer, and he had taken this. He had taken this offline and just started building it as a hobby, very much. And then he started an MSP. He had left the council, and that's how he met Paul. This is about circa 2005, 2006. And Paul was like, Alan, you can commercialize this. And then they came to an agreement, and off Paul went. He was the sales team, the onboarding, the account management, the billing team. And it was just him for about 5 years, about 2011. And then he started hiring more staff, and I came in at number 11. And then the real moments where it became Halo as we know it today was we were quite late to the web app game. So we were still, we're talking 2017. We're still a Windows application, which is unheard of.
Right.
And we had the advantage that Meta, Facebook, had released a brand new and open sourced a web frame technology called React at the time, way back when.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a very easy way to create modern, fast applications over old Anglia web frame tool sets. So yeah, basically, we were early adopters of that. So we actually leapfrogged the competition because we had waited so long to do it.
Right.
And then once we were just NetHelp Desk, one platform we served everyone, we decided to focus down the marketing. So we changed our name to Halo because the name NetHelp Desk doesn't conjure up lovely modern software. And then we'd added acronyms to the end of the names so you knew what you're getting into. Because when we changed our brand, Halo had no equity. No one knew what it was. So if you had the word PSA at the end, you knew what you were getting. So when we updated the name, updated the front end, it was still a bit spotty. But it's for the PSA side of the business and the story there. It didn't post-COVID 21. We had just got billing into the web app, so you never needed to leave the web application to do your day-to-day operations. And as soon as that moment happened, and the lockdown releases came off, it was me on my own for 4 years selling Halo globally, and it was. We're talking a few hundred MSPs a month were moving towards Halo at that stage. And the catalyst of how we became known, the go-to-market strategy was we just put Tim Bowers on Reddit for a year and said, be friendly, be helpful, but don't be confrontational. And that was it. A year later, we'd built a reputation. People were telling other people, and we were able to take advantage of the community spirits of the MSP space.
You sure have. You guys could write a book on the marketing that you guys have put together. And we'll talk more about that in a minute. But let's go back to the sales. So selling Halo PSA, this is your first sort of SaaS sales role, right?
Yes,
and
it
is.
Didn't first one.
Necessarily start off
no, it didn't.
Great after the first month. You want to tell that story?
Yeah, I'll tell that story. That's a fun bit. So I had done at this point every other role apart from sales in the software industry, in SaaS. And I was doing implementations. I asked Paul if I could do this because the best software salespeople are technical and also extroverted.
Mm-hmm.
When you have those characteristics, you'll gravitate towards that space anyway, and you'll be probably pretty good at it.
Mm-hmm.
So I asked Paul to do that. Paul was very reluctant, and he ended up asking me to do outbound phone call SDR roles, and I was calling 100 people a day as a target, and I did that for about a month, and then it didn't yield many results because that sales cycle was a bit short, and Paul was a bit skeptical. And then he said to me, "I'll never be a good salesperson," which is very funny now we look back on it together. And I then moved into that, and then basically this is right around the time of the carving up from NetHelp Desk to Halo, and it was Tim and Tim, me and the other Tim, and then ironically on the other side it was Tom and Tom. So it was Tim and Tim and Tom, ITSM, PSA, and off we went. And then that was my first sales role. At the time, I didn't know what to say. I didn't know what I was doing. There was no real training. I had the other Tom to help me out with some written persuasive content, but that was pretty much it. I just sort of unleashed. I guess that was a moment, to your point, where I sort of unbottled Tim and became, the start of who I am today.
Wow. To think back of a different Tim that didn't know what to say or how to have that conversation. Oh, that's amazing. All right, so let's talk a little bit about your go-to-market strategy. Halo PSA was different than Halo ITSM. So why was that? Why was it different? How was it different? Why was that Why did you go a different direction with the go to market?
Yeah. So we decided whether or not we wanted to let that part of the customer base die. So that
Hmm.
was the not wanting to do that was the motivation. The use cases between a PSA and an ITSM/ESM are relatively similar. We are serving either internal IT teams or external IT teams, people who are selling their um, IT experience, MSPs. So the core service engine between the products is shared, and then the bits around the outside will include all the commercial bits. So the CRM, contracts, quotes, billing. Um, the go-to-market strategy was different because of the audiences, of course, and the markets. So we were able to benefit from the community of the MSP space that was created way back when with Arnie Bellini, and allowed us not to have to spend loads of money on marketing. So we had no money in marketing, and we just put Tim Bowers on Reddit and called it good. And that yielded massive results, by the way. That was a huge ROI for us. Where on the ITSM side of the house, it was we spent millions on white papers, Google Ads, and had very limited success.
Hmm.
So, I mean, so to give you an example, at this stage in 2025, I reckon we have about a 30% brand and product awareness. So I reckon 1 in 3 of all MSPs know who Halo are, or have heard the name. But in the ITSM space, I reckon it's 2 or 3%.
Mm.
So we've been able to accelerate through the MSP space in terms of awareness way quicker than the ITSM space, just because of the nature of the market, and it's basically due to the community aspect of the MSP industry.
So most of your marketing comes from sort of that organic community interaction, but you have spent some money.
Yes.
And
So
yeah, you mentioned the F1 deal was really, really critical. That's been your key.
Yeah, that was a funny moment. So everyone probably now knows us for what we are in terms of our relationship to motorsport, and but if anything, the entire leadership team are technical. We are privately owned. We develop in house, and we had spent no money on marketing for 15 years, and we were waiting until the product was right, and then it was right. As in, like, we were winning. The conversion rate on a first interaction was about 70%. So you'd never heard of us. You tried it. It was almost likely a great fit. And then at that moment, we were like, right, now's the time. What do we do? And I got a text from Paul. I think it was January 23. And I got when you get like a horrible task from your boss, and it's like, am I going to do this?
Yeah.
So Paul would text me, and he is just one sentence: "Can you connect me to some F1 teams?" And I was like, "Right, okay. How do you know?" Because you go on their websites, there's no contact us.
Yeah.
And after the fact, I found out that 99% of all inbound leads that they get are junk.
Yeah.
F1 teams find their sponsors by outbound reaching, and they'll decide which brands they want to work with, and typically that works best for them. So I had to do some funny stuff to figure out the right person to speak to, and then getting their email address, and then I drafted a script on what I was going to say to each one, and then me and Paul had a thing where I would go in the room, set the scene, and then I would text Paul, and he would then join, so I could, you know, because when you're talking about 8-figure deals with some of the top percenter sales guys on earth who are working F1 deals, they qualify pretty quickly up front whether or not this is a good fit, because the money involved is horrendous. So a month later, I'd managed to contact about 8 out of the 10 teams on the grid. If you want an idea on numbers, a pretty fun one, Mercedes wanted, I think it was 25 million euros a year on a 3-year deal, and you didn't get a sticker on the car. I'll probably get in trouble for saying that, but whatever. And yeah, so the numbers were
Yeah.
crazy. I mean, that was probably about 40% of our revenue at the time.
Sure.
So it was like, right, okay, this is, yeah, we got really far along the way with McLaren, Ferrari, and Aston Martin. Then it became a game of who's lying, because they were all saying, "Oh, we'll be winning soon." So me and Paul and the guys had to put our heads together to figure out where the best bet is. And it just felt really authentic with McLaren. They were 10th out of 10th at the grid all the time. Alonso and Aston Martin were getting podiums suddenly. And it was like, but it felt right. The gut was there. And it felt when we were getting towards the tail end of that deal and signing stuff. And by the way, when you're dealing with those sort of deals, you have like freebies. In our world, maybe like a ramp period.
Yeah.
Have a ramp period.
Yeah.
In that world, it's like, oh, we'll fly you to Las Vegas, come to a track, we'll put you in a Paddock Club. Those sort of interactions are just, it's off the scale. I've never seen anything like it. But yeah, we signed that deal. It felt like a bad thing at the time. Obviously very exciting. We have to see through all the fluff. And then me and Paul drove up, and Richard drove up to MTC, McLaren's HQ. Zach Brown, the CEO of McLaren Racing, was there. Ironically, when you look at the cars, there's like Cisco, Microsoft, Google, very serious corporate grey companies. And there's a local country club next to the MTC where they normally stay. Because me and Paul are not from money and Halo's privately owned and we're a bit scrappy, and this is like, we're easily the smallest partner on that car in terms of size of employees, number of employees. But we turned up. We booked the Travel Lodge, which is just for everyone's records, is an entry-level hotel. The police were outside knocking on one of the rooms as we left because of the sort of place we were staying. But it didn't matter, and we actually shared a room. It's very funny. And then the guys at McLaren were like, "Oh, where'd you stay? Did you fly in? Did you stay at the country club?" And we were kind of like, "Oh no, we just booked the Travel Lodge," and then came on down.
Wow.
I've got some great photos of Paul signing his F1 deal. So it was a hell of a turnaround going from net help desk to a Formula One partner.
You had to, so a gut feel is one thing, right? A lot of MSPs, they say, oh, we should spend this money on marketing or buy this billboard or whatever it is. I have a partner that has a billboard at one of the MLB stadiums, and I saw what that cost. And I say, how do you justify that? So you talked a little bit about being nervous and you weren't sure that it was right. I mean, thinking back, obviously you've spent this money, you've got to figure out, was it worth it? I mean, it's already been spent, but there's also the perception.
Yeah.
So how do you deal with that? Right?
That's a great question. Why does any company sponsor anything?
Yeah.
Normally it's not for a good reason, or it's a very sort of, we're trying to get, it's used for a peripheral purpose or a target. And it's great. It's a great question. MSPs should ask that question. So Halo had no awareness, zero. And that was the most cost-effective deal to get in on a F1 car. And it was more cost-effective than the others. And we used it as a very specific purpose to gain notoriety. We probably won't do it forever.
Mm-hmm.
We're using it to go from zero to a percentage over our next couple of years being a partner. When that deal lapses, we'll see what happens.
Mm-hmm.
But we use it very specifically just to come into a room. No one's ever seen this before. We had the idea of wearing the race suits so people could see us and be aware of us. Because the likelihood is that if we get people engaged with us and they see the software, they'll realize, oh, the software is really good. Which was the purpose. So I had a weird scenario and a weird problem that was presented to me to go and manage, where we had the right product and no one knew who we were. So then suddenly, extroverted Tim comes out the box, and we have to come in like a tornado, and we have to leverage the tools we have to go and cause as much notoriety as we can and awareness to get people to understand who we are. Because as soon as we knew, as soon as people saw the product, being a product-led team with technical founders, that it is likely going to be the best fit, and they'll be really excited to use it.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, it's, it has a very specific purpose. It was the most cost-effective deal, and we're not going to be doing this forever, likely. But yeah, that's a great question. That's something I would ask as well.
First of all, it's done wonders. I mean, I've known you for the last several years. You come to these events. You've got your McLaren in the corner. Like, you've got people coming to your booth, even if it's just to see the car, but you've got their attention. And then you can say, oh, we have this badass PSA, by the way, as well.
Yeah.
And so you have that faith, that confidence in what you've built. It's just getting awareness, right?
It
So
was. That was
yeah,
that was the scenario, and it's if you come to a Halo booth, we will likely have a TV on the stand.
yeah,
So we will literally, as soon as you see the shiny McLaren, you walk towards the guys in the red race suits, which are probably going to retire after this event. They're getting a bit tatty now,
yeah.
but we have a screen. We get the product to you straight away. We want to show you the product. It's not book a demo, come down later. If you
Mhm.
approach a Halo booth and it's off a side, it will have TVs there. We want to show you the product as soon as you come over.
Yeah.
And we know that it will be a great fit. But when you're in a room with hundreds of vendors all doing similar things, how do you stand out? And the answer, it turns out, is wear a big race suit and get an F1 deal.
Yeah. So it's been really neat, Tim. You guys aren't the new kids on the block, but there's a buzz about Halo right now that hasn't existed for really any of the vendors in the MSP space. One of the most interesting things that happened in the last year was you guys publicly came out and said, we're not going to sell, right? So no acquisitions, no private equity, entirely private funded. And Paul, your founder, he's taken a bold, right, somewhat stance by putting this out there. Speaking of Paul, like, can you add some context to that positioning, where that comes from?
Yes, that's a funny one. So Paul is not a big believer in private equity.
Yeah.
Halo gets approached by every name you can think of in our space and private equity investment firms as well every single week. And the answer is always the same.
Mhm.
We are officially not for sale. And Halo is, I think the best way I can describe this is um, Paul took a real roll of the dice because in those early days, and I couldn't have done it. It was dicey, and there was not a lot of money, and then suddenly it wasn't right, it wasn't right, it wasn't right, and then it's right. And I really feel Paul is he feels vindicated that he took a long term gamble on a bet, and it's paid off, and he's now riding the journey that he created for himself, and the platform he's provided us, the rest of the team, with to go and create the world's best software company is something that's not been done elsewhere. I can't imagine another firm in our space being like, let's just take a 15-year bet that will eventually be a good fit. And most teams will start a company, go raise some capital, and off they go. Halo's entirely owned by Paul and a couple of other employees. And yeah, essentially we got to a size, I think this was 2022, and we had just won Microsoft. So Microsoft, a division of Microsoft in Seattle, had moved from Dynamics to Halo, the cloud resourcing division, and people were getting worried that we were going to get acquired.
Yeah.
And I think it was Paul and Tim had got together, and they were like, "Well, we're not going to do this. What would it mean if we just publicly announced that for a rolling 10-year period, we're not going to be involved in anything?" And that's per contract. So if you sign a contract today, 10 years from that contract date, it will roll. So deals we sign today, it means at the minimum in 2025, we're not going to do anything until 2035. That's how long term we think. And then we announced it, and it was probably one of the most positive PR releases we've
I was
ever
gonna
done.
ask you that.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
that sort of said to the rest of the industry, if you distill it down, Halo and the leadership team are a bunch of technical geeks who were
Mhm.
just building their own dream software company that they'd want to use themselves. Is probably the best way I'd put it. But that was a wild moment in 22 where we took that stance.
So when I think about where Halo is in the spectrum of uh, PSAs or ITSM platforms, in my opinion, you've sort of caught ConnectWise, and now you have your sights on sort of ServiceNow. How's that changed your day to day?
Yeah, that's a funny one. So I work with our largest teams globally. So when I started out, I remember very distinctly thinking a 10-man team was a large MSP, and ConnectWise felt like this huge target in the distance we'll never reach. And I'd probably say in the last 18 months, a point came where very large teams were moving from ConnectWise to Halo more often than not. And I think at that point, I think this is sort of late 23, we had overtaken the maturity of functionality in ConnectWise. And then I would say most of my day to day now is working with some of the largest teams on earth as I mostly come up against ServiceNow and other custom bespoke platforms. So I've gone from working with smaller shops, helping them get more out of their existing PSAs day to day, and I spent a lot more of my time working with enterprise clients, some of the largest on earth, which is a crazy moment for me.
Yeah.
I'm having to really change a lot of how my talk is. It's transitioned a lot from raw functionality into strategic enterprise service techniques, which has been a fun skill set to learn and a new challenge for me. It's meant it's not got stale for me. But yeah, now in the ITSM space, it's driven from the ITSM space. So Halo was in the ITSM space first, and it means that we are out of the box ITIL aligned. So we're V4 at the moment,
Hmm.
and it means that the maturity of the service engine on the ITSM side has always led the way on the PSA side. And there's a few interesting things. So, for example, it feels like we are helping MSPs align to ITIL. So if they're doing co-managed IT with larger teams who demand that of their MSPs, it's just native out the box with Halo.
Mhm.
Something else would be the service portal. Typically an afterthought in this space, I feel like, from my lens. But in Halo, it's because of the requirements set that differs from MSPs in the internal IT space. It means that the portal experience is second to none. I mean, we go up against ServiceNow and win. So if you're trying to move from an omni-channel service delivery model and bring it under a single high-quality portal experience, unbeatable in the space today. So there's been cool contrasts like that, I would say.
Yeah. So as a former MSP, I always felt that there was a gap. We went from ConnectWise to ServiceNow, and I always felt like ServiceNow was a little too much,
Mm.
a little too robust, a little too, you could customize everything. Do you feel like you're filling that gap now, or
Yeah,
are there some
that's
other things that are?
so there's a conversation with ServiceNow versus Halo is we'll do probably 90 something percent of ITIL alignments of ServiceNow
Mhm.
for about 20% of the cost. That's the raw deal, but the raw contrast. But the detail is the fact that Halo is so. For example, ServiceNow, you need to have an overhead of developers to help you manage and build and maintain this thing. Um, Halo, because of our React framework technology, Halo's setup has standardized configurations. So it means that you don't need coding ability to be able to build out your Halo account, and the maturity of the tool set means that it will do if you're if you're north of 90% ITIL alignment required, you have those requirements, you're probably a bank. And if you're not a bank or a HSBC or something else or a very mature organization, why are you spending the extra? But there was no other option. So interesting to your point is we were accelerating through the marketplace at a certain rate, and we were starting to sort of plateau off. It felt like, and as we've got in the last year or so, um, for the largest teams on earth, if you had requirements north of ConnectWise with the service model, it felt like you'd either I won't mention names, but you'll either lean on ConnectWise for custom development, you'd either use a bit of ConnectWise and then just custom build your own tools around it to do what you wanted it to do, or you would go and buy ServiceNow and sort of fit a square peg into a round hole. Um, and a lot of those teams who are using ServiceNow are transitioning to Halo. Some of the largest teams on earth are moving from ConnectWise to Halo. It just means that the velocity of the onboarding, the codeless nature means you don't need to have a technology team to manage it and build it day to day. It gives you way more agility. It's a more modern tool set. And with ServiceNow, when you bespoke create your own ServiceNow, you then have to have you have quite tough support requirements. So because Halo has standardized config, it means that you can pick up the phone and get someone to support you on your account tomorrow. So for the teams that move from ServiceNow to Halo, they typically save north of $1 million a year, and their service increases, and they have a more modern product. So it's a real landslide. So to answer your question, at the top end of the market, it's felt underserved, and it means that the largest teams on earth can use Halo over ServiceNow and increase their profitability and get a better deal at the end of the day.
So, speaking of these sort of two markets, you've got these enterprise, this top end, and then you have the MSP market, which, by the way, there's some MSPs that definitely fit in that enterprise, but the
Mm,
majority of the market are are smaller teams, how is Halo going to continue to service both
Yeah, it's a
sides?
great question. So because of the products constantly moving, we have internal development team. They're based in the UK. We have offices in Seattle, in Florida, UK, and Australia. Um, four international offices or four offices, 250 staff between them. Halo is we only sell one product. We use it ourselves to run our own business, and we do a release every 2 weeks, but a large, polished quarterly stable. So over that period, we've matured the product, and it means that as it's growing and getting more mature, we are starting to take lower enterprise use cases. So we're working with Red Bull right now, which is a north of 1,000 technicians, um, a very serious use case, very complex requirements, different world to what a small MSP would require. Um, so the engine will handle those capabilities and it'll be built out accordingly so it can do. But we spend a lot of time with the out of box trial experience to make it as simplistic as you need it to be. So uh, to your point, there's probably a period, it's probably a point in a journey of an organization where they go from needing a single PSA sort of transitioning into best of breed. So, at scale, if we're interested, it's not worth upsetting hundreds and hundreds of sales staff or HR staff to can them into a single PSA solution. Um, because Halo's CRM capability is not on par with Salesforce's for an enterprise use case, which is not a dramatic thing to say. And it means that you would probably, but Halo's service engine it competes with the world's best. So there's actually a transition point where teams will go from PSA to ITSM. And you'll see this shortly that we are dropping the acronyms off of our name now. We felt, talking about exposure earlier, we feel that we now have the brand equity that you just know who Halo are. So it's now usehalo.com, the Halo platform, and there are use cases that can be done. And it's a Lego set to build in what you want it to be. So that's the background. How do we keep it relevant for small teams? In all honesty, there'll probably become a point where it won't be a good fit for the smallest teams. They will, using like an Atira, Synchro, or Super Ops would be a better fit. So I had someone tell me, which is a great way of thinking about this. You can cross a river in a battleship, but do you need to? But some of the work I did last year, because I work quite hard with this, where our out of the box trial we keep simplistic as we can to help small teams pick it up. And one of the reasons I won that award you mentioned at the start of this podcast was I'd worked with Ninja to create this bundle and offer it at scale to teams to give them one place to get those tools for teams who are just getting started, so they can skip the whole RMM PSA one tool, which once you get past a few people, you get out of maturity pretty quickly.
Right.
So there's loads of initiatives. It's hard to do to take a Mona Lisa and make it out of Duplo sometimes. So I would, we work hard. It will be difficult to support a scale over time, I reckon.
You've done a pretty darn good job of it, so I'm sure you'll continue for as long as you can. So
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
I don't. There's no plans to do that, but it's you need to be ready for a tool set that it'll be the last PSA you move to.
Yeah.
So if you're ready for that, it's there waiting for you. We have a lot of onboarding partners. I'm doing a series. We're actually launching a 100-part series on YouTube, I think later this year or next, where it's just a step-by-step onboard it yourself. Wow. So we're doing our best to standardize and help that as much as we can. But yeah, it is definitely a balance.
So you personally have had the last 5 years have been an incredible run. You've been traveling the world, selling Halo PSA. You're growing this incredible business. You're the COO now of this amazing brand. But what's next for Tim Barton-Wines? What are your goals?
What's my goals? Probably to travel less. We feel like we've got to this point in our journey now where the The exposure's at a point we're satisfied with. I think everyone now, mostly knows who Halo are. Um, for me, what's up next? Let's talk about it. I think this is there's a few things that are on my mind which I'm working on right now. One of them is we want to look at our contracts again, and we're discussing internally what it would mean to create the fairest contracts on earth. Like, for example, SLAs. If we breach an SLA, you get compensation automatically applied. What would it mean if we just created the fairest contracts on earth? So that's something we're discussing in real time right now. Another thing we're looking at is compliance as a service. So I'm working quite hard to try and get that into the platform to allow teams to get into that space and facilitate it quite with some relative ease. I'm also announcing some stuff at the show, and you let me know if I could talk about it now or
Sure, you can.
okay.
Absolutely.
Then so let's talk about what some of the craziness I pulled together for Empower 25, which I'm hopefully you will enjoy. This is pretty happy with this one. So one of the things we did was I had a moment because I work with hundreds of our top teams every year, contrasting the use cases, and I can spot the gaps. So one of the things I noticed was a lot of our customers had the capability to do new starter requests, but hadn't automated it. So I sat down with Alex Golden, one of our top technical guys at Halo, and I said, "Is there a way we could create a script and ship it in Halo for free that would allow teams to pick up Halo, integrate it into CSP, and achieve zero-touch new starter requests, which would save hundreds of hours a year for technicians?" And we figured it out. We are launching that tomorrow. It's already in the trials on the website, so you can just go to our website and start the trial, hook up CSP, and you've achieved it. That's number one. Number two is leading on from that, because like Enable, best of breed partners, we're trying to work with enterprise MSPs, and we're trying to be everything they need all in one space for your entire tech stack. And we've recognized that's something we're both really good at, and we work very hard together to unify that experience and integrate it as much as possible to create a very seamless suite that an MSP can pick up at scale with enterprise requirements and deliver effective service better than anywhere else. So one of those things is there's two things. One of them is working with a mutual partner, Roost, who is an automation platform. Halo's runbook capability will do about 30% of what Roost does. Roost is more polished and it goes way deeper than what we can do today. So I got chatting. When was it? I think I had a couple drinks with the CRO, Charlie, which is very on brand.
Yeah.
And I said to him, "What would it mean if we, brought this together and you created like a Halo automation pack in Roost as a product that a customer could come along, buy Roost, buy the Halo automation pack, bolt it into Halo." And there was what was sort of almost like a light bulb moment. And we created, we're starting out by doing offboardings. So Roost, in record time, I might add, which I'm dead impressed with, they were able to create a very intricate, like multiple, like it's tens of steps within a central Halo and Roost to be able to have a customer fill out a offboarding request form in the portal, in Halo's portal. It would go off into Roost and it would remove everything.
Mm.
So zero touch offboarding as well. And we're going to be building out a portfolio of these automations as a pack. And we are announcing that partnership, official partnership, and it's live today and it's in the trial. So there is stuff for small MSPs, people who are just picking up Halo, there's zero touch new starters, and we'll do more with that. For teams who need more and want more and have bigger requirements, we have the partnership with Roost, which will really cement and make, I guess what it's doing is it's taking the hardest automations out there and making them really accessible, which I think that's the value. And then the biggest one, which everyone at Enable and at Halo have been working really hard for the last 6 months on, is Halo is becoming the most integrated partner with Enable. So we enable from lovingly, and I thank you forever. You are the first RMM on the market to create your integration from your side into Halo. Because when Halo was small fry, no one wanted to deal with us, which is fair enough. So we had to create it from our side. But there's a load of stuff and automation and endpoints in your API that we can see. So long story short, the End Central integration into Halo is being revamped. It has richer device data being pulled into Halo. It includes billing and it syncs more often, which is super cool. That's just a free thing that's available in about 2 weeks from today. We also have the Insight integration, Insight RMM. We also have Pass Portal, and the two new ones as well, AdLumin integration. So you can take threats from AdLumin into Halo, create tickets, and automate threat detection resolution at scale. And the same with Cove, which is super cool. So Cove, AdLumin, and Central have all been redone for this show. We're announcing it at this show. Most integrated partner. We are sort of presenting the partnership, two tools that work really well together at scale, all you need in one place for your enterprise requirement MSP.
I'm looking forward to the reaction at this announcement this week, and really, really exciting stuff, Tim. I appreciate you sharing that on the pod. And by the time this goes out,
I hope I don't get in trouble. I'm
yeah.
sorry in advance if I've told something I'm not meant to.
Will be great. So you are absolutely crushing it, Tim. My last question, the one I always like to ask folks, and I heard a little bit of this earlier, but when did you know, Tim, now that's it?
When did I know now that's it? There was probably, when was it? It was probably, do you know what it was? I think it was, there was a moment post-COVID, because pre-COVID, Net Help Desk days, very early Halo days, it was a rough ride. I think when the first few months came by after COVID and it started to pick up and I was pulling myself out of the swamp, and it felt like the reaction was good from the MSP market. People were excited to see us. And I think we could boil it down. Do you know what? I think that was probably the initial moment.
Mm-hmm.
I would say a big moment was probably actually at Empower last year when I came on stage in front of 750 people and we shared with them something they'd never seen before. I had a whole team watching. I thought, do you know what? This is it. This is something that I'd be happy spending the rest of my life doing. And and since then, it's been more of the same. But I really think there was a jump in just quality of life and positive reaction when we actually felt like it locked in. That was the moment. It was probably as an extrovert, as an attention seeker, walking off stage to a round of applause. And I've since a number of those teams in the audience I didn't know at the time, one of those being Impact Networking, one of our joint customers up in Chicago, Erica Leah saw me for the first time on that stage. And there's other stories like that as well that really felt like that was the moment where that was it.
That's awesome, Tim. Tim, you guys are absolutely crushing it. I thank you so much for your partnership, your friendship over the years. I wish you and the Halo team the absolute best in the future. And thank you so much for being part of the podcast.
No, I appreciate it. I think it's the first time someone's actually sat down and asked about this story. So hopefully it's a good exclusive for you.
It's an interesting story, and I'm glad you're able to share it, buddy. Thanks so much, Tim.
Thank you so much.